Welcome to Grant Rock Warehouse, and welcome to part 2 of Avoiding the Sophomore Slump. The panel's here, the panel's ready. Let's do this.
Talking bands no one talks about. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight, you've seen these gentlemen before. We are back, and we are doing part 2 in our, it's not really a series, but we're doing a separate episode, Avoiding the Sophomore Slump. So if anybody knows what the Sophomore Slump is, you'll have like the freshmen, like you're a freshman in college, you end up being a sophomore and you don't live up to those standards that you lived up to as a freshman. You have this in the music industry. You've got bands that have that great first album. They put out that second album and it either doesn't sell as much or the reviews are bad, but it pales in comparison to that debut album. Tonight, we're going to talk about those bands that avoided that. Bands that succeeded. Maybe it sold more. Maybe it sold the same. Maybe the album was a better record than the first album. So we've all picked 3. We're going to all pick our 3 albums that we believe achieve the greatness that the sophomore album should achieve. That makes sense. So anyway, I want to welcome Paul Simon, Todd Evans, and Eric Hansen here tonight. And we're just going to do it. I say we have, since it's just us, we can do one, and just go around until we're done. So, Paul Simon, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
It's always nice to have you here. Start us off. What's your first one?
All right, my first one, I'm going to go the most obscure of my 3 is Waking Hours from Delamitri. So, if you're not familiar with Delamitri, from Glasgow, Scotland, it's Justin Currie. He formed the band, and they have had a revolving door of members, except once he picked up guitarist Ian Harvey, he held on to him for the rest of the duration of the band's run, even after they called it a day and then came back. Their first album, self-titled Delamitri, 1985, came out on Chrysalis. It was kind of a country folk new wave feel to it. It had 2 singles, Sticks and Stones Girl and Hammering Heart, kind of compared to maybe the XTC Elvis Costello feel. In 86, they toured the U.S., and the main point I want to come across with Waking Hours is influences. When they toured in 86 throughout the U.S., throughout the lineup changes and all that, Justin Currie started listening to a lot more R.E.M., Creedence Clearwater Revival, Steve Earle, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, The Smiths, Lyle Lovett, just a cacophony of or a cornucopia of variety. And so they came back and got signed by A&M. They did a second album with producer David Kirschenbaum, and everyone agreed, the band, the producer, the record company, not what they expected and not living up to what they thought it could be. So they shelved that entire second album. They went back to the drawing board and they brought in Hugh Jones, who, among other things, produced Adam and the Ants, who was almost one of my choices for this episode. And in May of 89, they came out with Waking Hours. Now, my first exposure to Waking Hours was as a college DJ right after it released. So the first single was Kiss This Thing Goodbye in July of 89. Second single, Stone Cold Sober, in September of 89. Third single, Nothing Ever Happens, in December of 89. And to show how long of a shelf life this album and these tours had, all the way in May of 90, fourth single, Move Away Jimmy Blue, was the single. Now, the reason I'm bringing up all 4 singles is they hit in different places in different ways. Kiss This Thing Goodbye got a lot of college radio play. It got, I know it charted in the U.S. and it charted in Canada. Stone Cold Sober was actually my first exposure to them when I was a college DJ. My partner Phil played them, and I was instantly hooked on the entire album. Nothing Ever Happens was the biggest UK single. That was their crowning achievement out there. Political song, real blue collar feel to it. The inspiration was kind of Margaret Thatcher's United Kingdom politics, and the response that Justin Currie had to that, which I'll just spoiler, wasn't all that strong. It was very strong, but wasn't on board with it. And then Move Away Jimmy Blue is still a concert staple even to now. I caught him like 5 or 6 times in the 90s, and live they absolutely cooked. I mean, this band can do anytime they played a cover. I've seen them cover Maggie May, I've seen them cover Ace of Spades, to the point where I don't want to get any Motorhead fans angry, but their cover of Ace of Spades brings the house down every single time. They're known for it. But as far as actual tracks on the album Waking Hours go, there isn't a sleeper out of all of them. So to go from their 1985 album, which was good, but not all that stand out, Waking Hours, not just was it a whole new band with the exception of Justin and Ian, but whole new sound, improved production. They're tighter. The songwriting is so much stronger. You could tell all these influences really made it happen. So that's my number one choice. I don't have the vinyl to hold up, but I do have my my signed from Justin and Ian postcard from their most recent release. So Waking Hours from Delamitri. Other people may know them. In '92, they hit with Change Everything, which was always the last to know. And I trying to remember, Just Like a Man was another single. And Twisted in '95 had Roll to Me, Start With Me. That was the other one people seem to really pick up on. But those three albums, they actually had a great run between Waking Hours, Change Everything, and Twisted. And it started with Waking Hours. Waking Hours was a fireball. So that's my first pick.
Okay,
So
I have to say this real quick. Funny you should mention Delamitri because I went to the I went to Half Price Books like a week ago, and they had budget cassettes for like $1. I'll be damned, but I just bought that on cassette, and it's like chrome tape on A&M. But I was looking on Discogs. I was going, I know I bought a Delamitri, but I can't remember the name of it. And it's got different album covers. This album has like a UK.
Two or three.
Yeah. And I had to look at it, and I'm going, wait a minute, what did I buy? Because I don't see it on here.
Yeah.
That's it. I bought it, and it's a
So do you have the original color, or do you have the black and white?
It's the black and white.
That's the more mainstream release. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the more mainstream release.
So
Excellent.
Funny
excellent.
you should bring that up because I just bought it. I've been playing
can't
it in the
recommend it
car.
enough.
Yeah, that's great.
Paul, so you're telling me that there's a Delamitri album that was produced by David Kirschenbaum that never came out?
You can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
I found
Because
it.
I'm a big David Kirschenbaum fan, and I having a hard
It's
time
out there.
believing that that's not any good.
but never properly.
And
released.
I've never listened to the whole thing all the way through, so I'm not passing any kind of judgment. I'm saying how it was received, and none of the people involved with it were happy with it. They didn't think it was representative of the band, of the sound they were going for, etc. So that is not a blanket statement of it's not good. That is, they all agreed, and they brought Hugh Jones in.
but never properly released.
To this day, never properly released. Like I said, I found it on YouTube.
Probably I'll never see the light of day either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Delamitri's a big seller.
Right. Criminally underrated, but not a big seller.
Well, what was the song on Twisted that was the big track? Remind
Roll
me.
to Me.
Roll to Me.
That was a big hit.
Yeah.
It was a good record too. You can pick up the Delamitri catalog pretty cheap if you ever find it out in the wild. There you go. All right, good choice, Paul. I appreciate it. All right, Todd Evans, what's your first one?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the B-52 Wild Planet. So that comes after, of course, this one here. Equally iconic album covers. I think this one actually might be a little better. That's just my opinion. Really strong album. Has an almost perfect side too. But it's interesting. I learned what I learned about this album by doing some research on it really kind of surprised me. So these albums, if you look at the success of them, are kind of like this. So the B-52's debut, 1979, it went platinum eventually, but it peaked at number 59. And Wild Planet only went gold, but it peaked at number 18. This is U.S. chart position. So the first album had 3 singles. Rock Lobster peaked at number 56. Planet Claire and Dances Mess Around With did not chart. And this was a surprise to me. Wild Planet had Private Idaho, which peaked at number 74.
Yeah.
I thought that did better than Rock Lobster, but it did not. And then Give Me Back My Man and Party Out of Bounds did not chart. So they're kind of even. B-52 sold more records overall, but Wild Planet sold more records at the time it was released. So I think that qualifies it as being, and I mean, look at them.
Well, it's part
like,
one and part two.
You bought this. Why would you not buy this?
Yeah.
Mhm. It's too bad they didn't continue that on. I think that give me a green one like that and then a blue one like the Weezer thing.
Well, they went on to do Party Mix, and then they went on to do Mesopotamia, which was actually something that was meant to be longer that kind of got
And it's a shame that it's not.
Yeah, it kind of got aborted, and it supposedly there are people in the band that don't think it sounds finished, and there was kind of a stop in the momentum by the time Whammy came out, and then they gradually built up to the point where Cosmic Thing was a big success.
I remember when Cosmic Thing came out in '89, and I just thought, oh my God, I thought it was absolutely, I still think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
thing, the songwriting, the production on that record, the album cover, everything. I know Ricky's not in it anymore, but my God, it was, and it still is. It's a great record. But my favorite, though, I know we're on a tangent again, but Mesopotamia is my favorite.
Really?
Oh, I love Mesopotamia. I totally get it. I'm going to ask you, though, there was a Mesopotamia track that came, I don't have it. There was a comp that came out, and they released yet another Mesopotamia track on it. It was on CD, like, oh, for God's sakes, what was it? Something with the moon.
Yeah.
Do you
That's,
heard? Do you
that's
have
the one I
either?
don't have. I have the other one.
Okay.
That one's Nude on the Moon. I believe that's what it's called.
I believe that there is one of the bonus tracks is from
Okay.
Mesopotamia.
I have Songs for a Future Generation, which is also a great comp that has
Mhm.
2 new tracks on it. Okay, well then I'm gonna have to search that.
Well,
I'm gonna have to seek that out.
You're going to have to look. I would research it, but I know that one of the unreleased Mesopotamia tracks came out on one of those comps. And if
Well,
it's not on the one you've got, it's on that other one.
On the other one, yeah. But I don't think anybody thinks of Wild Planet as a sophomore slump album.
I don't.
I certainly don't.
The thing about Mesopotamia, I think it was very creative. I like what David Byrne brought to the table. I think it
I think there were parts of it that sound a little bit too much like David Byrne.
Yeah, I like it. We all hear things differently, ladies and gentlemen. But I dig Mesopotamia. I don't know. Let us know down in the comments. I know we're talking sophomore slumps, but if you like the B-52s, we do want to hear from you. So, all right, that's a great choice, Todd. I totally
Thanks.
agree with that. There's no sophomore slump there. Me personally, Wild Planet is, well, I like Mesopotamia, but Wild Planet is my number 2. So I think I would choose it over the debut too, as well. So not that.
Yeah, and you really believe that if Fred had a dog, that he would name it Quiche Lorraine.
Oh yeah,
I'm
100%.
totally on board with that.
But I love that record. But yeah. Anyway, all right, Eric Hansen, nice to see you. Thank you, Todd. What's your first choice, Eric?
Thanks again for having me, Grant. Always fun. Always fun. So my first choice, released in 1990, Hell to Pay by the Jeff Healey Band.
There you go.
So their first album came out in 1988, See the Light. That was had the big hit Angel Eyes. And the whole band appeared in the movie Roadhouse, the original one with Patrick Swayze, not the new one. And Jeff Healey himself had some acting chops in it, but they had 4 songs on that soundtrack, which were covers. I'm Tore Down by Sonny Thompson, who's an R&B guy. You had Hoochie Coochie Man, it's a Willie Dixon song, Roadhouse Blues by The Doors, and my favorite, a Bob Dylan pen, When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky. My favorite on that soundtrack. So they already had a little bit of exposure, and they go into the studio and record this one. And, Jeff Healey, these guys kind of took the formula that Stevie Ray Vaughan, the late, great Stevie Ray Vaughan did, which combines the blues with some of the rock or hard rock. And I think what helped with this one is he had some guest appearances on this. You had Paul Schaefer, who we know from the Blues Brothers, and David Letterman played some keyboards on some of the songs. You had Bobby Whitlock. He was the organ player from Sam and Dave and Derek and the Dominoes. He's, I think, on 3 or 4 tracks. And then you have Mark Knopfler, of course, from Dire Straits. He penned the song, I Think I Love You Too Much, which actually went up to number 5 on the Billboard. That was one of the singles released off of here. And then the gem on the album for me, it's still my favorite cover of this song. The Beatles' While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Of course, it's got George Harrison on acoustic guitar on this one, background vocals, along with Jeff Lynne from Electric Light Orchestra on background vocals. Absolutely love that song. And really, this whole record, there's not a bad song on here. It flows really nice. The band sounds great. Jeff, we all know he was blind, absolutely fantastic guitar player, but his soulful voice really helped shape the sound of this band to me. And, on that first record, he had 3 or 4 writing credits himself. This one here, he's got 6. So he's improving. And, it's a shame. 41 years old. Died of lung cancer? Stevie Ray died young. But there's a video on YouTube. I think the two of them are doing Look at Little Sister, Stevie Ray song. And Stevie Ray is a top 10 favorite guitar player of mine. Jeff is keeping up with him in that video. And yeah, just love it. But also, this one was produced by Ed Stasium. He produced Talking Heads, Ramones. But yeah, love it. One of my favorite albums. And beats the Sophomore Slump.
Definitely. 100%. Wow. Good choice. Holy crap. All right. Thanks, Eric. All right. My, this one's definitely qualifies. This is a band that started out in the early 70s, part of the glam rock movement, I would say, 100%, formed in 1968. They had an album that came out in 1971, which was basically a collection of singles, kind of like The Move. The first Move album is really just a collection of all their singles combined. And this is kind of the same thing, but it is a legit album. Now, they took a break from 71 until 73. They put out another record. No, I'm sorry, 74. God, why am I thinking 73? 74. So there was a break in there. So in that time, they pretty much revamped and kind of retooled to some degree. And the band is Sweet, which I think's very influential. They put out a lot of great stuff. And this, in the United States, they had some albums and some success. The first record that really got any success was Desolation Boulevard. And it was actually a conglomeration of two different records, the UK album Sweet Fanny Adams and Desolation Boulevard. But the record I am going to talk about is the UK album Sweet Fanny Adams, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the best Sweet album. Tracks on there, oh my God, I look at the track listing. The bonus tracks, Sweet Fanny Adams, you have to look at Sweet in a certain way because they put out a lot of singles. Now, if you're looking at this in a certain perspective, the singles that were out on this during this time were Ballroom Blitz, Teenage Rampage, which are phenomenal. They weren't on the original UK album. They ended up using those like on the American release because, that's what we did here in the United States. We just said, well, we'll use the same title. It's like what they did with the Beatles. All right. Anyway, song Set Me Free, Heartbreak Today, Rebel Rouser, they do a version of the Peppermint Twist on here, for God's sakes, but they make it their own. Side 2 starts out with Sweet FA, which is one of the greatest Sweet songs, but it rocks. It's Sweet, for God's sakes. And the other thing is, Sweet came out around the same time Queen did. Who came up? So the vocals on Sweet are very similar to what Queen were doing at the same time. It's like, is it the chicken or the egg? What's the deal? I don't know who came up with that, but both of these bands were around the same time and they both had similar sounds. But this record, I think, is perfection. I sold more than the debut. And it's amazing that after all that time, they could kind of revamp and reinvent themselves and come back out. They shook that, because they were considered a bubblegum band. Because all that first album, very bubblegum. But this is a lot harder edged, and they kept getting harder and harder as they kept going. But I think this is a great record. To me, I think this is the best record. But you could not go wrong with Desolation Boulevard. I think in Canada and in the States, I think they were both the same record. But yeah, half of Desolation Boulevard in the States is Sweet Fanny Adams. So great record. So I check it out, but I would highly recommend it. But this is definitely a record that avoids the Sophomore Slump. They improve. So, all right. That's my first choice. Paul Simon.
All right. Choice number 2. If you've seen me on the Warehouse, this will come as absolutely no surprise. And Grant's already going, yeah, I know where this is going.
Oh, I already know where this is going. Yes, I do.
Yeah. So we did an entire episode about this band, but I cannot talk about bands that avoid the Sophomore Slump without bringing up Letters to Cleo. So I'm going to condense it since we did a whole episode. Do check it out, by the way. Fantastic episode with all the information here on the Warehouse. But just to condense, if you haven't seen it, they're formed in Boston in 1990 as Rebecca Lulu. There's Kay Hanley and Greg McKenna. They went through a couple of players. I actually found out from that previous discussion, Grant, you and I had, I do have their original 45 that they recorded on Rebecca Lulu Records, their own self-put out one. I do own that. So It's just very carefully placed in storage right now.
Of course.
But that being said, they went through a couple players and ended up getting their lineup with Mike Eisenstein, Scott Riebling, and Stacy Jones on drums. They come out with their debut, 1993's Aurora Borealis, produced by Mike Deneen. He would stay as their producer, which I think is one of the reasons they avoided the sophomore slump, is they toured hard, they kept writing, they started practicing new material, and they kept refining it. So the lesson here, if the last with Delamitri, if it was influences, the lesson here is going to be live staples and refining your material. So by '95, they got the big sign on with Warner/Giant, I think it was at the time,
Giant,
before the whole Revolution thing happened. But they did a worldwide release of Aurora Borealis in '95, the same year that Wholesale Meats and Fish came out. So as far as which one was the better seller, Aurora Borealis was the better seller, but I would argue that their sound is tighter, their sound is more refined, it's a stronger album, there's more edge to them, and they're definitely more confident on this album. So you've got, all these songs are live staples. You've got, where Aurora Borealis had, everyone knows Here and Now, a lot of people know I See, that was a single. Great songs, not taking a thing. This is probably the thinnest margin I have between the debut and the sophomore one for me. Having to pick one, it depends on what day of the week for me, really. But you've got Demon Rock as your opener. It goes right into Fastway, right into Jennifer, right into Awake, which was the single from this album. Straight through, you've got other live staples like Acid Jet, Pizza Cutter. Still gets a huge response when they play it live now. They will be on tour this summer, by the way, in the Midwest for the first time since 2016, so I will not have to drive 10 plus hours to see them every year like I have been since 2016. I'll get to see them here in the Midwest. So they're hitting Ohio, Detroit, Summerfest in Milwaukee, and Chicago. So if you are around, definitely catch them. They are one of the few bands I listen to that definitely improve every single time I see them. Not one time accepted. They've just gotten better and better. So they are my second choice.
So bizarre you picked them, Paul.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I am totally shocked.
It's just shocking.
All right, cool. Thanks, Paul. All right, Todd, you're up.
Okay, so everybody knows this album, right?
I do. I've heard it. I think I've seen it.
See that, right?
Maybe. Used bins. Yeah.
But everybody also knows this album.
Mm-hmm.
So here you got Ben Orr there with the lollipop.
Yep.
Both of these albums produced by Roy Thomas Baker. Both of them sound great, sound different and kind of weird, kind of not like all the other bands that were coming around at that time. But statistically, these two albums, the debut and Candio, are kind of like the B-52s. They're kind of like this. So the Cars came out in 1978, went 6 times platinum, peaked at number 18 U.S. charts. Candio came out in 1979, went 4 times platinum, but peaked at number 3 on the U.S. charts. So 3 singles on the Cars, but quite honestly, they're all minor hits, with the exception of maybe the first one, Just What I Needed. Number 27, My Best Friend's Girl, number 35, and Good Times Roll, number 41. We think of those songs in our head as big hits, but they're minor hits. And then when you get to Candio, the leadoff single was Let's Go, but it got to number 14. And then it's All I Can Do at number 41 and Double Life, which did not chart. So when you look at those statistics, they're kind of like this.
Yeah.
But this is a really strong album. And Let's Go. I can remember when my older sister was a cheerleader, and she made up a cheer with the hand claps. And I was like, oh, the Cars must have made it, because high school girls are singing that song and clapping the claps. The album, the side one ends with Double Life, Should Be Doing Candio, which of course is great. Night Spot's my favorite Car song, and Dangerous Type. It's a really strong album. When I was doing my research for this, I didn't realize that the album that comes after this, Panorama, also did well, which that's not what I remember, but it also did well.
I remember at the time when Panorama came out, the videos were played on Night Flight.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But I think Candio, I think everyone could agree that is one that's not really sophomore slump.
No, I think it's kind of controversial. Some people think it's not as good as the debut. Candio is my favorite. The thing about Candio and the first album is that both of these records, even though one was recorded in the UK and one was recorded in LA. Those records, am I crazy? But do those records sound the same?
They
It's
do.
like
Yeah.
bookends. It's like,
They
here's
do.
part one, here's
Yeah.
part two. I've said this before. You could take all these tracks and put them on shuffle and it would work. All the
And-
tracks on the first two albums are strong,
Yeah.
all the same kind of songs. And the sound is the same. It's amazing how
Yeah.
they sound the same.
Yeah. And I heard Cameo first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I heard Cameo first. I think I've told this story before, but our local album rock station, 96 Rock, used to do the album hour on Sundays at 11 o'clock at night, and they would play an album. And so they teased all day they were going to play Yes, Fragile. So, I had my cassette deck ready because I couldn't afford to buy Yes, Fragile yet. And I could buy like one album a month. And so they go, you know what, we're going to change our plans because we just got this album in and we're going to play The Cars Cameo. And I was fine. And that was the first time I heard it. And so I've been a fan ever since then.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we used to go out, the neighbor kid had a 71 Nova. I've told this story before. A Craig 8-track player and like mind blower speakers in the back. And we would play the first Cars album, the second Cars album, and Boston, the first Boston album. I think those are the only 8 tracks the guy had. I swear to God. But that's okay, because we were playing over, and those Cars albums just became part of my DNA. And we would just crank those records. And it just reminds me of back in the day when I was a kid delivering papers in the 71 Nova. I'll never forget.
They made records to sound great in the car back then.
And you know what? A lot of people bitch about the 8. We're on a tangent. But I remember the 8-track going through those big ass 6x9s when it really sounded good.
My sister's boyfriend had all the Billy Joel albums in his Camaro on 8-track, and I can still remember how they sound.
Me too. It makes a big impact. But man, those Cars albums on an 8-track in a 71 Camaro, that's the way to listen to it. Swear to God, it sounded great. But
I do got to throw out the fact that Letters to Cleo did a great cover of Dangerous Type for, I think it was The Craft. And with
from The Craft, yeah.
Was
Guest
it on
keyboards
8-track,
by... It's
Greg
not on
Hawkes.
8-track.
well, then damn it.
Greg Hawkes.
Wow.
And they end up becoming lifelong friends with him.
Yeah,
He played on it, and then they
I have that.
ended up playing on their third album, too.
Wow.
I'm going to throw this out. Does anybody ever heard the Greg Hawkes solo album? That
I
only
have. I
came
used
out
to
on,
own it.
it only came out on vinyl.
Yeah,
Wish
I
they
don't have
put
it
out.
anymore.
You don't have it? Not any good?
No. Well, I'm a huge fan of Greg Hawkes. I didn't care for that album. It's
Okay.
pretty experimental.
All right.
I recommend the Benjamin Orr album, The Lakes.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, absolutely.
I have
Oh,
that
I've got
over there
that. I've got it on Elektra, Japanese original pressing of it.
Yeah, Candy-O is a great pick there, Todd.
Thanks.
That debut album, that back half of that album with those 4 songs.
Yeah.
And to me, the hidden gem on that album is All Mixed Up.
Yeah, All Mixed Up is my second favorite.
Great
Cars
record.
song.
Perfect album.
Yes.
All right, cool. Thanks, Todd. That's an excellent choice. God dang, that's a great record. All right, Eric, what's your number 2?
So my number 2, going back to 1972 for this sophomore album by one of my favorite bands of all time, the Doobie Brothers, Toulouse Street.
There you go.
So 1971, their debut comes out. It was pretty decent. And this album was produced by Ted Templeman. It's the first album to feature longtime bass player Tyran Porter, and the first one with Michael Husak on drums. So they give you that twin drum attack that they had throughout their whole career. This one's got classic songs on here. Listen to the Music, which we've all heard 1,000 times. Rocking Down the Highway, Jesus Is Just All Right. But as with all their albums, their deep tracks, which is in their entire catalog, even on this one, the title track is great. It's almost like a precursor to Black Water by them. White Sun is fantastic. You have Disciple, it's a good rocker. Cottonmouth. And the one thing about this band that I think is often overlooked, but I think one of the strengths is their vocal harmonies. And it shines on this album as it does throughout all their albums. But this one's probably a little bit more rocking than the first album. But, these guys all, even with the 4 Michael McDonald albums, they incorporated, Southern rock, a little bit of the Blue-Eyed Soul, a little bit of bluegrass, think like Creedence Clearwater Revival or maybe a little Allman Brothers in there. And then this one is often rated top 5, 6 from a lot of Doobies fans. To me, I like the debut, but this is miles ahead and a sign of things to come from the band, especially on their next few albums. Yep, Toulouse Street by the Doobies definitely breaks the sophomore jinx slump.
Yeah. Those albums sound so good.
Yes, they do.
I've always been a casual fan of the Doobie Brothers, and I was in my buddy's record store a couple of years ago, and he was playing The Captain and Me, and I walked in and I was like, what is this?
Mhm.
And it was a song that I had never heard from that album, and it sounded so good. So, yeah, those albums, all of those albums sound fantastic.
Cool. Good choice. All right. So now I'm going to totally change up my plan that I was going to do. I just did a show with Michael Adano right before this one, and we talked about the band Skid Row. We talk about a lot of things on this channel, and we looked at their whole career. And I thought, well, my God, this is a perfect example. Slave to the Grind, the second Skid Row album, came out in 1991. During the era of Nirvana Nevermind, think about that. Grunge is starting to take off. Their first album came out in 89, and let's look at some numbers. This is kind of like what Todd was saying with the Candio thing.
Yeah.
This record, Slave to the Grind, is considered much more of a critical success, and this is the CD that I had Sebastian Bach sign on the 80s cruise. But critically, this fared better. This is a little bit harder of a record than the debut. The debut is much more polished, a little bit more commercial. This is not so much a commercial affair as the previous record.
Okay.
But the reviews for this, much better than the debut. This got up to #1 on the Billboard charts. It peaked, where did it went 2 times platinum here in the States. Now, the debut album, not as critically acclaimed, but it sold a boatload more records. It got up to #6 on the Billboard 200, so it didn't get as high, but it sold 5 times platinum. So, which one's more of a success? Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Exactly.
This definitely
Slave to the
avoided.
Grind.
See, there you go.
Okay.
Panel's getting all worked up. So, commercially, critically, this is probably more successful. Did it sell as much? No, but it did really well. And everyone considers this the best record, maybe? I don't know, gentlemen. What do you think?
I'd say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
I'd say.
So I thought, hell, that's right on this is current. I'm just going to choose that because it didn't hit that sophomore slump. So there you go.
I remember my brother, I think he came home with that cassette tape, and we knew Monkey Business, and then it goes into Slave and the Grind riff. I'm like, whoa, what is this crushing thing going on? It was, far and away, I think, just overall better than, and I really like the debut album, but that one is.
Well, I like the debut.
Riot
I
Act
like
in a darkened room.
Oh yeah, Quicksand Jesus.
Quicksand Jesus. There's just so many great songs on that album.
But you cannot deny how catchy a lot of the tracks were on the debut. Of course, it was a first record, much more commercial.
I just think it's a strong Slave to the Grind is a stronger album. I agree with that sentiment.
There you go.
Good
so
choice.
there you go. Just popped in my monkey brain. Yeah. All right, Paul, you're up. What's your third one?
All right, so on the last time we did this, I watched both the comment section and the live chat, and 2 albums exploded. They weren't jumping our case, but they were close as far as how could you not mention this and this? So the honorable mention goes to Alice in Chains for Dirt. I wanted to talk about that, and all props to it. I love that album. But that being said, I'm not even going to do my usual spiel and give a history lesson, because to give a history lesson about this album and this band on this channel would be pretty ignorant of me. All I'm going to do is read the track list from 1984. Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice, Escape, Creeping Death, and The Call of Cthulhu. Ride the Lightning from Metallica. It is, in my opinion, the anti-Sophomore Slump album. I don't think there's any argument that can be made that they not only blasted it out of the park, but they just kept going. Like I said, everybody knows the history. I'm not going to talk a lot about things we already know. Kill 'Em All, very strong, but everything about Ride the Lightning is an improvement. And I'm not slighting Kill 'Em All in the slightest, but there's nothing about Ride the Lightning that isn't an improvement to Kill 'Em All, in my opinion. The songwriting, the playing,
Yep.
the art, everything about it. They just improved everything. They were already great, but this just kept going to the next level. I got nothing to argue on that one. And like I said, we already know the
Everyone
history,
would
so I'm not
agree.
going to bother.
Either.
No one would argue with that at all.
Yeah.
100%.
Still
How
very
did we
good
know?
Punk
How
album.
did we not mention that on the first one?
That's why I had to make it my pick for the third one for this one. Enough said. Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, enough said. I can't argue with that. All right, Todd. Damn, that's a good one. All right, Todd, what's your third one?
All right. Well, let's everybody get this out of their systems.
Oh,
I'm gonna
no.
talk about Phil Collins.
What?
All right,
That's a good
everybody
record.
watching at home.
Great record.
groan
Great
for a minute.
record.
I'll wait. Everybody done? Okay.
Great
Phil
record.
Collins, Hello, I Must Be Going. So, of course, comes after this. Face Value 1981. Hello 1982. Face Value went 5 times platinum, peaked at number 7. But Hello, I Must Be Going, which some people I think would consider, some people would think that it didn't do as very well. I mean, I'm sure that there are casual fans and people who aren't fans of Phil Collins who would see the Blue Album and just assume it didn't do very well. 3 times platinum, peaked at number 8.
Yeah.
So first album, 4 singles, In the Air Tonight, I Missed Again, both peaked at number 19. And If Leaving Me Is Easy did not chart, and This Must Be Love did not chart. So you get to Hello, I Must Be Going. Okay. 7 singles off of this record. Through These Walls did not chart, so I'm sure they probably panicked when that was the first single. But You Can't Hurry Love got to number 10. I Don't Care Anymore got to number 39, which is higher than I thought it did. Don't Let Him Steal Your Heart Away did not chart. I Cannot Believe It's True got to number 79, which that's a crime. That should have got way higher. Why Can't It Wait Till Morning and It Don't Matter to Me did not chart. He didn't make another album until 1985. And because the self-titled Genesis album comes next in the canon. But those singles went well. That's why I was looking at my phone a little while ago. I just wanted to confirm. Those singles went well into 1983 because there were so many of them.
Yeah.
But really strong album, produced by Hugh Padgham again, but this album sounds a little bit better to me. It has the Phoenix Horns, the Earth, Wind, and Fire guys playing horns on this. Better horn arrangements and tighter than the first album, I think. And the West Side, which is an amazing instrumental. So yeah, that's my third choice. Hello, I Must Be Going. It needs more love. People look at it and who don't know much about Phil Collins and assume that, well, face value blows it out of the water, but not really.
No, not really. No.
No, I agree with you.
Both of those records.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, good choice, Todd. All right, Eric, you're up.
Well, I kind of piggyback off of Paul's choice, and really at this point, all I needed is kind of just hold up the album cover. 1981, produced by Martin Birch, who we all know did Deep Purple and Whitesnake and Black Sabbath and Rainbow and everybody else. One of the most important albums in the new wave of British heavy metal. This is the last one with Paul Di'Anno on vocals, and the first one with Adrian Smith to go along with Dave Murray to give you that dual guitar attack that they became known for, well, later with Janik joining the band. But anyhow, classic songs. I mean, Wrathchild, Murders in the Room, Another Life, Genghis Khan, Innocent, the title track, Purgatory, I've always liked. Steve Harris is just crazy good on this album. And really, you know what? They've become synonymous with Bruce Dickinson on vocals, and rightfully so. But I got to give a little props here to Paul Di'Anno, especially on this album and the first one. His vocal style fit what they were doing early on, combining heavy metal with that splash of punk, which really is what Motorhead did for their whole career. And I love the debut album. This is a must-own for any heavy metal fan. So, Killers. All killer, no filler.
There you go. I think that's a good choice. I was going to change mine again, But now I think I'm going to go with, I'm going to change my mind again because I do that. I'm going to go with a band that only put out 2 records. Um, and this is a band I've talked about them before. Um, I saw this band on both of these tours, and there was hardly anybody in the audience each time. Now, this isn't a band that really sold any records. The reason they broke up, they couldn't sell any records. This band is critically acclaimed. Wonderful band. And I think they're probably even more thought of now than they were back when they came out. Obviously, because I saw them twice and no one was really there. I'm going to talk the band Jellyfish, which I think, as far as a critically brilliant band, the album Spilt Milk, although it did not fare as well as the debut Belly Button from 1990. Spilt Milk came out in 93. It got to 164 on the charts. Belly Button was 124. Critically, people look at Spilt Milk as the superior record. This is the record where they threw in the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Because they were thinking, well, we might not ever have a chance to do another record, so let's just do it. And what they've done here is just created a masterpiece.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, the songwriting on Belly Button, of course, brilliant. Songwriting on Spilt Milk, brilliant. The public might not have understood it. Was it timing with Jellyfish? Because, you know, if we had Stephen Schnee here, he said, well, they're probably power pop adjacent. You could look at them as a power pop band. They are much more than that. They are definitely a critics band, but absolutely brilliant. You know, they've done so many, there's been different compilations that have come out. They've put out these records, like 2 CD sets, because people want it. Now these things, if you look, they're out of print now. They go for unbelievable amounts of money on Discogs. But those 2 albums, absolutely brilliant. And the fact that I got to see them on both tours, I'm rubbing it in, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
was not so lucky. I never got
Nope.
to see them.
I lifted my copy of Belly Button the same time I was playing Waking Hours at WLRA, so I was listening, but I wasn't at the shows.
I just remember back in the day when Belly Button came out, they played it on, what was it? The alternative, was it an alternative station? God. I remember hearing it. It might have been on the alternative station. 1990 seems pretty early, though.
It was XRT in Chicago. Playing
Okay.
it.
But it was brilliant. And I remember going to Used Kids Records, finding a promo copy, because the promo CD of Belly Button has colored graphics on it, and it folded out from the middle.
That's the one we had.
That's the promo.
Station.
And I was able, and eventually, for some idiot me, when you're young, sometimes you need to purge stuff for money. And it was probably in one of my purchases, I got rid of it, but I was able to locate another one. So that's what I've got's the promo. But absolutely brilliant. I could listen to these albums over and over again. There is no drop in quality with Spilt Milk. So that's my pick.
Great choice.
I was late to the party with them, but yeah, Spilt Milk. Oh,
And they were good live.
oh
I
man.
saw them when Jason Faulkner was playing guitar with them. There were more people at the Belly Button show than there was on the Spilt Milk show. Spilt Milk, they were playing, I've told this story before, but they were playing on a flatbed truck at an outdoor venue called Ludlow's, which they could have been playing inside. They were playing out on a flatbed truck. There wasn't that many people there even paying attention. It's weird. I don't know. Great show, though. God darn, they were great. Sounded wonderful.
And that album was I almost went with that one. And you know what? Speaking of power pop, and Todd,
Yes.
I'm not sure, Paul, I'm not sure if you'd be familiar, but I almost cheated because really it's their 3rd release, but Fuzz Bubble, Cult Stars from Mars.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
got
yeah.
that.
I'm telling you what, it's a power pop masterpiece.
It is.
It is absolutely. I can't not. I listen to that album still regularly. It's 2 years old.
Mhm.
Oh man, it's so great. Anybody who is fans of Jellyfish, Sweet, who's another? Throw me some other. Oh, the Raspberries. You're gonna, and you don't know that album. You're gonna find a new best friend.
See, and that's how I feel about Waking Hours, because you've got laps in the first song alone. You've got I was playing all these albums at WLRA in 1989 and 1990. You got lap steel, harmonica, and banjo on a bass-led song with "Kiss This Thing Goodbye" as the opening track. Then the next song would have been "The King Is Half Undressed." Then the next song would have been, something off 11 from the Smithereens. It's like all these bands. That was such a great era.
Well, Eric, did you ever watch my Fuzz Bubble interview that I had on the channel? Look down.
No.
There's a Fuzz
Did it
Bubble.
come out? What did you do it when they released the album?
It was before it. I don't remember.
Let's
Todd, were you on that with me or no?
I wasn't. No.
Because Jim Beckia, who played,
He was on there, and I had Jim on the show just by himself.
Okay.
But they were on there talking about, but I had the band on, so look down there and check it out.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
They've already been on down below.
Great.
When I had interviews, when I was done it for a while. Just kind of got out of that, I guess. I don't know.
You have us instead.
Yeah, I don't need to interview anybody. Have you? But yeah, check that out down below, Fuzz Bubble. But yeah, that first album from 2000.
Yep.
Then I've got the demos and outtakes. I've got that one,
yeah.
which is also good. Yeah, great power pop band, and not many people know about them anymore. But and I've got the Cult Stars from Mars. I forgot I have all of it. For God's sakes. But yeah, that's a definite tell. There's no Sophomore Slump here either, even though they have such a limited catalog. And it's kind of a tragedy they never really took off, but it could be timing too. 2000, and you've got a power pop band, but you also, what was the one band? Fountains of Wayne. I mean, I kind of look at Fuzz Bubble and Fountains of Wayne kind of in that whole kind of similar vein.
Weezer was still around too.
Weezer, so it fits in there, but it seems a little late,
I saw Fountains of Wayne play with Soul Asylum, who I'd love to talk about sometime.
I see those solos. I don't really know much about. I would, if we're gonna do a show, let's do it. I'd have to study, but I'd do a ranking or something. That'd be good. I'd have to study, but
Candio.
Let us know in the comments or the live chat. What do you think of Soul Asylum? Anyone, any interest? Let's gauge
should
it
we
that
look
way.
at Soul Asylum? Yeah, I'd be game for looking at that. All right, so I guess anybody have any honorable mentions before we wrap this dog up?
I already gave mine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I have any this week.
Okay.
got just two real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Midnight Madness by Night Ranger.
That's a good one.
That's good. That's
a great one.
a good one. It's more than the
real
debut.
close. Gretchen Goes to Nebraska by King's X.
No sophomore slump there.
And I love Out of the Silent Planet, their debut. And Gretchen is, Candio was the other one I was gonna, but Todd took that one, so great choice.
I came across some things. I can't think of any but one right now, but I came across some things where I thought of great second albums, but the first album wasn't a success, so I didn't do it.
Great second album.
I ran into that about 4 or 5 times. Like I was thinking about doing Haken Visions, but their first album was pretty much cult status. So I thought of quite a few like that, where I was just like, no, I don't know if the first album didn't sell and the second album didn't sell at an equal amount, I'm not sure if that qualifies.
Maybe I cheated the system with Telemetry then, because that first album didn't go very far.
Well,
I think it works better with alt rock bands because a lot of times they have a higher profile than how much they actually sell.
I see what you're pointing at. Reckoning.
Reckoning.
Yeah, talking about. I almost picked Reckoning, but
Benatar Crimes of Passion. Hell, that's better than the debut, I think. Hell, there's 3 right there. Marshall Crenshaw.
Well,
Purple from Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah, I'll even put Invasion of Your Privacy by Rat.
Yes.
Not as good as Out of the Cellar,
but a lot of people thought that Field Day for Marshall Crenshaw was not as good. They complained about the production from Steve Lillywhite, but I don't mind the production at all. I think the songs on Field Day are just as good as what came out on the first Marshall Crenshaw album.
I think a lot of people agree with that. I almost picked Fly By Night, and then I was like, well, the first album wasn't really a success. So
that's the same reason Eric and I talked about it. That's the exact same reason I didn't pick Fly By Night.
Yeah.
Well, it was an improvement.
If we did a show that was
definitely
good second albums, then we could pick that one.
Yeah. Don't Look Back by Boston.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
A
that's
lot of people
that
think
would be
that-
a good one.
I think it sounds just like the debut.
Yeah, I think
Some people think
that
it's a
would
step
qualify.
down, but I think it's just as strong as the first album.
Yeah. You know, you got Van Halen too.
I almost did more songs about buildings and food.
Yeah, you could easily put that in there.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, but REM Reckoning, I think that's just a strong
Reckoning, definitely.
Murmur.
Yeah.
Todd, you think so?
Yes.
Okay.
I like Murmur better, but they're like this.
See, Reckoning's my favorite. God, I've had that poster forever.
What?
That
See,
was
my first REM album was eponymous, so
REM Reckoning
I'm spoiled.
promo poster. Yeah, I've had that forever. Need to do something with this. This is not good. For some reason, Sparks is up there, and I need to have something bigger. But I move them around. But yeah, REM Reckoning is my favorite REM album.
Oh, Rainbow Rising.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that would count.
yeah. I'm
What about-
looking at the record. So.
Yeah.
What about the first Dio solo album, the second?
Yeah.
Last line. Yep.
Is it? I don't think it's any worse than the first or better. I think they're,
If you're looking at relatively speaking college radio, They Might Be Giants Lincoln is
Brilliant.
as good as the debut.
yeah, I like. It's as good. Lincoln is my favorite They Might Be Giants album.
I think Lincoln is a little bit better than the debut.
Brilliant. Ugh. Darn. I like all that They Might Be Giants stuff. Even the kids' records that they put out.
I have it all.
Todd's got it all. I've got most of it, but not probably like Todd's collection. All right, everybody, we're going to wind this dog up. There you go. Albums that avoided the sophomore slump. I want to thank Paul Simon, Todd Evans, and Eric Hansen here tonight. Another great discussion. What's next for this crew? I don't know. But we talked about some stuff. And I've written it down on this envelope. And we'll get something scheduled. But these gentlemen will be back, and we will be talking more music because that's what we do in the warehouse. So please like, subscribe. You know the whole routine. I don't know what's next. But stay tuned. We'll be back. All right. Have a good one, gentlemen. Thank you.
I love it.